Hello and welcome to the Tea Room on YouTube. I am your host tonight, Becky, where we're going to kind of dissect a little bit the City result from Friday and all the other things that we can think of that we can talk about Spurs. I've got two great guests with me tonight. HG, up there in the top right in Austria. How are you tonight?
Yeah, Austria's in the top right of the world this evening, but I'm all right with that. I'm doing well, because next week's half term, so I'm already counting down the days. I've got one Spurs game to, and I know that when half term, when any kind of school holiday is approaching, Spurs will win, because we only lose when I can get crap from kids on a Monday morning. But if there's no chance of me ever getting my own back, we will win games. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of games and the chance to see Spurs get back to winning ways.
Yeah, see, lucky you. That was one of my problems with City on Friday. At least I was back today for the first time since Friday's result. But yeah, when we played United, it was like, you can always tell how Spurs have been because I do a Monday yard duty at like 8:40. And if we've won against a Northwest team, I am full on hat, full coat on playground duty with my Spurs coffee mug and there's various parents. And I'm like, whoop, whoop. And then, yeah, when we have games like following Sheffield United and games like that, I'm like, no, I'll just wear my normal teacher coat. I'm not wearing all the Spurs stuff. So, yeah, it was a bit kind of in between today. I'm disappointed about Friday, but not as disappointed as I was at Sheffield United. But we'll come on to all of that later. Marlon, great to see you from South COUS. We were just saying off air, I was on your pod, I think it was in June, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and we were liaising lots over the kind of the ins and outs of links and various things, but never actually met. So it's great to see you and it's great to have you on the Tea Room. How are you today?
I know, I am good. I'm good. Like last time you had Ash, he's a tactician. I'm the logical one on the pod. So I will tend to find the logical answer behind everything. But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Spurs obviously upset me a little bit, but I think I'm getting over it. I just want the next game to happen so I can forget about it. But yeah, no, I'm good. And no, thank you for having me on today.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Hello to everybody in the chat. I can see a few regulars already. HG's on comments duty tonight. So yeah, get your comments in. Great to have you along. The usual things, if you are new to the show, please like and subscribe. And we'll get into it. So Friday night was the FA Cup game against City. I was not there. There is a bit of a pattern to this. I've missed West Ham at home, Chelsea at home, City at home, because these have all been all the midweek fixtures that I can't get to. But I was at Wolves away, so I have seen some away games where we've lost. But yeah, there's a pattern to home games that I've missed that we've lost. Me and Jack just wouldn't have been able to get there for kickoff. There's absolutely no hope of us getting there on Wednesday for 7:30 kickoff. So yeah, we haven't got anyone on the. Were you there, Marlon, at the game in the South Stand? No. Rarely we've not got someone who was actually at the game to kind of talk it through. But we'll do our best from watching it on TV. And as I was saying off air, Jack plays basketball on a Monday night and a Friday night, and he plays till 8:00. So I picked him up, and I had people tweeting me pictures of the South Stand from North Lower, and people tweeting me their flags, and I was like, I'm not there, but it's fine, it's okay. Drove home and then heard in the car the Oscar Bob offside, which seems to be the first thing that kind of note that happened. HG, what did you make of the offside from Oscar Bob?
Oh, it was clearly offside. Everyone saw that in the stadium straight away. That his left big toe was offside. It's funny because I came on the show before the game and I did a podcast with Caller, and I kind of threw Oscar Bob under the bus. I was like, who have they got? I mean, Grealish probably won't play. Doku, I haven't seen him in months. Oscar who? And so everyone was giving me a hard time that he was bound to score. Now I'd done that. And so when that went in after a few minutes, I was like, oh, I'm going to get it in the neck now. But obviously, it was offside. And I'm pretty certain the linesman got it right, which I've always find incredible that when they are that close, that he was so confident. But it worked in our favour. City just... I think the goal itself, it would have been actually a pretty good goal. Had Vicario not saved it, it was a well-worked goal. But thankfully, Vicario did enough, and then the offside flag came into play. But it was, that was the first thing of note, sadly.
Going back a bit, Marlon, what did you make of the kind of the lineups? Because when I was writing down the notes this afternoon, I was thinking all the rumours all week, wasn't it? Was that Maddison was going to play and it was going to be Bentancur, probably Maddison and Kulusevski. And then when the lineups came out at 7:00, Maddison hadn't made the starting 11. He was on the bench. What did you make of the lineup?
So when I saw the lineups, I was, do you know what? I'm not going to lie. So I predicted it was going to be a 0-0. Like I told everyone, it's going to be 0-0. It's going to be one of those boring games, but I thought it would be 0-0. And I saw the lineups, and I'd done my prediction on the Irish Hotspur, and I went on their channel just before, and I went, I wish I could change it, because I saw Man City's lineup, and I thought, actually, this is doable. This is, I think Spurs, our defense was our normal back four, what we all expected. Our midfield was pretty much the best we could pick. Yes, our front three, I will probably get onto that later, but I thought we just had more than they did. Little did I know, within that first 5 minutes, he doggy slips. And Bob, he was offside. At first, I thought they were going to give it on. I was that adamant. I saw it, like everyone was going through the groups and stuff, and I go, that looks onside. But as HG said, it was a stud, toe, whatever it was. It went into our favour. And I started to feel a bit confident after it, going, this is our day. This is going to be typical Spurs, Manchester City. Little did I know. But no, the lineups, like I said, the lineups for me, I genuinely thought we had the better side at the time. Like looking at it's going to be us.
I was very similar. So I was sat on kind of when the message comes through and you see who it is, and I was like, oh, of all the matches that we've had against City over the years, even going back to the most recent one this season and then the one at home last season when Kane scored, we've got Haaland wasn't playing, De Bruyne was on the bench. And you were kind of like, this is a team that we could get a result against. Like you just said then, we've had our back four back at United. So we had Van der Ven and Romero, and we had Udogie, and we had Porro. Like I said, Hojbjerg was in instead, and there was some people sort of saying they were pleased with that. Some people were saying they weren't pleased with that. And then you've got the front three, which with Son being at the Asia Cup is kind of what we kind of expected, with Werner starting and Richarlison in the middle. And yeah, the thing I always say is if in order to beat these so-called bigger teams, is we have to have a little bit of luck. And then when I heard that it'd gone to VAR, and even on the radio commentary, they were like, oh, I think this is going to, because Clinton Morrison was on BBC commentary, and he was going, well, I think they're going to give this. I think he's level. This is going to get given. And me and Jack were going, oh, God, here we go. What is it? It's only like 5 minutes in or whatever it was. This is going to be a cricket score. And when that didn't go in, it was like, oh, okay. There's a few games this season, I've said many a time on this show on Mondays, is that we had the little bit of luck at the beginning of the matches. I can see it keeps, again, the Fernandez header at United, and there's loads of different incidents I can remember where it went in our favour and you're like, Spurs kicked on. It's almost like they're a little bit nervous. But it's just, you could see the way, certainly from home, the way that City were playing, even though it's their so-called B team, the way that they kind of move the ball around, they just looked like it was a matter of time. And I sort of said that, it was really difficult to think of any chances. We had one shot on target. They had 18 shots and 9 on target. And that one shot on target we had was that ball that came over that Johnson sort of ran towards and the keeper came out for, which is not really a proper chance. So I was sort of saying in reflection that, if we scraped a 0-0, great. But it was just that kind of, when they brought De Bruyne on, it just sort of their kind of, and Doku, their kind of momentum changed. HG, did you kind of agree with that sort of, the way it sort of went?
They got better. I mean, that's just it. Obviously bringing on De Bruyne, they would get better anyway. But just the two changes they made, they took off their striker, and you started to think, oh, okay, that might help us a little bit. No, it just meant they had even more of the ball in midfield. And we just couldn't live with it. And again, there's no real shame in that. Like, we all know it wasn't our best midfield, but even if we had played as many of our best players as possible, it would have been a struggle because we wouldn't have had the numbers. We would have wanted our wingers to stay high and wide, and we would have almost taken that risk and said, okay, try and beat us in midfield with your 5 against our 4 or whatever. But it sucks to know that we never got the half chances that we usually take. Because when we play City and we beat City, like we never dominate those games. Like, there's always a bunch of chances that City miss, and there's always Spurs usually get the first goal. Do you know what I mean? Like, the fact that we haven't conceded means that we are getting the first goal, and then everyone kind of gets galvanized by that. So when it didn't happen, you got to 85 minutes and you thought, I'm not being funny, I would have taken a draw, I'd have taken a replay, because I knew that a lot of our better players would have been back for the replay and eligible. So you're thinking, okay, it sucks to go to City, but you'd rather go with your better team. It wasn't to be, but it's like I haven't watched City every game this season. Obviously, I don't know how often they've been on Sky, but I don't watch every game that they play. But it felt like they just played really, really well, and it didn't matter what we did. We could have kicked a few more, probably. We could have complained a bit more to the ref. But yeah, I mean, those 18 shots, like apart from the save that Vicario made early on for the disallowed goal, like nothing seemed particularly difficult for him. It was frustrating when you'd see the shot coming in, but it was all relatively close to him. So it's one of those games, like we play that game another 10 times and we might win 3 of them. But it just we're still not good enough, and I think we can all be aware of this. But we're not good enough to play those best teams and go toe to toe with them when they play well, especially when we've got half our team out. But even if we were at our best, that would have been a struggle.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Is that we still, I remember you saying after the United game, we've still got players out. Obviously, we've got Bissouma Sarr and Son away. Matters didn't start. We've still got players. Even Van de Ven still kind of coming back from an injury, and Bentancur is coming back from an injury. Is Johnson carrying an injury? We're not. It's not our strongest side. It just felt a little bit of not a missed opportunity. It was just a bit. It just felt from people speaking to that were in the ground, they just felt it was very flat. And it was a bit sort of meh, and you were kind of like, oh, what a shame. We tried to build the atmosphere. We had a good attendance there. City bought a lot. It had all the kind of makings of being a really good game. Like HG said, most of the games are kind of 4-3, 3-2, 2-1, 1-0. They're usually quite eventful, which I think is part of the reason it was picked up by TV. It was just a bit nothing game, really. Now, Marlon, you said about the front 3. I thought the back 4 were tremendous. And, seeing Romero going in and getting tackles and Van de Ven, his pace, we just forget how good his pace is. What did you make of the front 3? Bearing in mind that our midfield was Bentancur 3 games back from injury, Kulusevski and Hojbjerg kind of behind them. What did you make of the 3?
So for me, the front 3, there was a lot of people said Werner and Johnson were making runs, but the midfield weren't picking them out. Like for me, Kulusevski probably played his poorest game so far of the season.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And a lot of people put a lot of pressure on the front 3, but I thought our midfield was a bit disjointed because even Bentancur, who is one of my favourite players, even for him, he had a really poor game. And I think that's where we really did lose it. But the problem with Johnson and Werner, Werner, we all know what we're getting. He's quick. He makes runs. He just can't finish. We all know, we know he's not changed. He was the same at Chelsea. He was the same at Leipzig. And then we saw it against United. It's just not going to change. However, for me, a lot of people put a lot of pressure on Johnson at the moment. And I think for him at the moment, it's a case of he might need to be taken out just to take some of that pressure off, because I think a lot of it's unfair. Because I don't think it's all on him. I don't think when he came in, I don't think he expected to play this amount of games. And he's literally gone from playing straight away, got injured, and then he's come back to when we were going through an injury crisis, and he's literally been thrown in the deep end. But Son was kind of covering that, but now we haven't got Son. So it's kind of now with Richarlison as well, who's been on a bit of form, but for me in both cup matches, I thought he played really poor. A lot of people said he was running a lot, but he was running a lot, but not doing nothing with it. And this is the problem when your front 3 are not in cohesion with each other. You're going to get games like this. For us to only have one shot on target, which, like you said, was Johnson, you've kind of got to look at the midfield and the defence. And even the defence, because Porro and Udogie, I think Man City played a very, very great game against them too, because they knew that was our threat. And they just stopped Porro making passes. They stopped Udogie from going in the middle. And for me, I know you said the defence played really well, but I thought Udogie was poor. And people will go, what are you talking about? But defensively, I felt like he was out of position a lot. Whenever he did try, he had to be covered on most of the time. And that it was him that slipped over for the first goal, which was offside. And I thought, when he was on the ball, he was okay. But I thought defensively, he got caught out a lot, which made Van de Ven have to clear up for him. Van de Ven was brilliant. He literally showed he could be he could walk into that Manchester City team tomorrow and not be out of place. Where Romero, I think if he wasn't captain, I think he would have got caught out a little bit. But I think because he was captain, he calmed his nerves. Like I have no qualms with what the back four did, but I just felt Udogie was the poorest one out of all of them, and I felt like he cost us a lot. But it just seemed to be going through the whole team. They weren't passing, they weren't doing that. So the front three for me, yes, a lot of people will blame them, but at the same time, the midfield just weren't giving them the ball, and I think that was the massive problem. Where Kulusevski was, I don't know. But the worst thing is when Maddison came on, we looked a lot worse. So this is the strange thing. Maddison, you could blatantly see Maddison needs some minutes. Not fit at all.
Because if you think as well, if you go back to Kulusevski missed the United game, didn't he? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, did. Yeah.
And whether he was ill, and then it was kind of, was he ill or was an injury? So whether he's still kind of dealing with that. But yeah, I was very much of the same idea, is that Kulusevski, we've had a few games where Maddison's not played and Kulusevski's played in that number 10 role, and he's kind of, been really integral, and he played so well at the Etihad as well.
So well.
It was just like you said, it's just a bit flat really from everybody. And I think in order to beat, as people are saying in the chat, to beat the best players in the world, the best team in the world, with probably the best manager in the world, everybody has got to be on it. And when you've got 4 or 5 players that aren't, that's why I think maybe the positive is that fact we didn't get beat 4-0, is that we only lost 1-0 and maybe probably to a lucky goal. But we need everybody to be playing really well in those sort of situations. And when we don't, we're then going to really struggle.
I mean, like, Marlon made a key point when he said that City knew what they were doing against us. I mean, like, everyone knows that we want to invert our fullbacks, which means they play more in midfield. So what did City do with their wide players? Well, they just let them go with the runners. So you're sitting in a situation where I forget who played left wing. Was it Bernardo Silva? I think on the left-hand side. So obviously every run that, if Bernardo's on Udogie and Oscar Bob is on Porro, then if we don't have the ball, well, who are they going to mark? They're going to be marking those players, the ones that are right next to them. And so, of course, the fullbacks for City had all the space in the world to attack down. We often saw Guardiola down the left. We saw Walker down the right for their disallowed goal. And it looks bad because Porro's out of position and Udogie's out of position, but they've just followed the runners.
Yeah,
that's the crazy thing. And I mean, I've seen this in a number of games, but it feels as if our wide players are being told not to track back as much as you might expect them to, because otherwise I can't imagine why they don't do it. Like, if you see that, like, if Timo Werner sees Kyle Walker running down the wing and there's no one there, it's got to be his job. That's his man. Like, for the rest of the game, that's his man. Why he would just allow that to, well, the fullback will take him. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. So it's a struggle, but it does feel that we unless Werner and Johnson are both extremely lazy, you don't see that hustle to get back from either one of them. So I guess I would rather believe that they've been told not to do it, but even that seems a bit. I mean, that's kamikaze. That's Chelsea at home, 9 men on the halfway line kind of football. Against Man City, I don't think you can do that. Against other teams, maybe you'd get away with it, but City is so good at keeping the ball that even if those fullbacks don't get to the byline and get a cross in, well, they'll just keep the ball and they'll have an extra man. So the fullbacks, I mean, our wingers would have to get back anyway to help defend. It's like we can, I guess, justify how things didn't go in our favour, or we can discuss it. But I mean, deep down, as we've seen in some of the comments, like, City are just very good at what they do. I mean, Ange said it himself. They're 9 years now, is it, with Guardiola? They are very far down the line. Even the ones that are new in the team have played that style of football longer than we have, right? So even if Oscar Bob is 18, 19, 20, whatever he is, like, he's still gone through the City system, and their academy played the same way. So it's tough to know that, yeah, like, we all thought no Haaland, no De Bruyne, this is as good a chance as we're going to get. But City were just on it from the first minute. And yeah, like, oddly, I mean, I said this after the game, but it felt like had that disallowed goal been allowed, they might have eased off a bit, having got the early goal, and then we could have had a better game. But because it didn't come until the end, they were just on it. And it's tough. Like, they didn't need to run that much because it was half-court football. You know, like, they were in our half the whole game. So who's doing the running, really? The midfield players are making short bursts to try and win the ball back, but they did that pretty quickly. And then it's just keep ball. So I'm sure that Bentancur ran more than most of those City midfielders, even though he played 20 minutes less. It wouldn't surprise me that he was being busier trying to keep up with things than those midfielders were with their short 5 to 10 yard passes.
And I was going to say, you just mentioned what Ange said about being 9 years into it. The only thing that worried me about those comments is that the one thing we've always been told is that we'll be competitive. No matter who we're playing against, we'll be competitive. And like, let's be honest, none of us don't mind. We don't mind losing to City. We know who they are. But usually we give them some sort of game. No matter who the manager's been, we've had some terrible football. We've had some times where we've got lucky, yes. But we've always been competitive. And that was the worrying thing about the City game at home. That was the first time we went, we can't compete with these. And it was only 1-0. If it was 3 or 4, we would have probably accepted it. But the fact that we weren't even competing was the case of, oops, where are we going from here?
I think at times that we gave them too much respect, didn't we? And I think that's what's disappointing is in those games have, like you said, have always been really competitive. And like I think HG's saying there, that maybe they go 1-0 up and that forces us to come at them. I think, the game plan probably was to not concede for as long as possible. The problem for me was Bentancur, I thought, did so well. And I did tweet, people who've seen my tweet, I did say that I thought it was Hojbjerg's best game that I'd seen for a long time, up until about 80 minutes, when he just seemed to just evaporate. And that chance that whatever he was doing, where he passed it back to De Bruyne and De Bruyne hit it wide, I think that's what you're saying, Marlon. That goes in, the toenail offside's gone in, and it's a completely different game. Yep. And I think that's why some people are saying, actually, we only lost 1-0 to best side in the world. Yes, we did. But there were situations where we were quite lucky there. That one from De Bruyne, I remember looking at Jack and going, oh my God, what the hell has he done there? And even, Hojbjerg, and he did another one, I think, just almost straight after, didn't he? And you were like, oh my God. I was like, take it back. He hasn't had a great game. Oh God.
No, but that was the thing with Hojbjerg. And that's what you get with Hojbjerg. I thought he was brilliant in the first half. And I'm not a massive Hojbjerg fan. No. But I thought first half he was absolutely brilliant. He controlled most everything. He was probably the best one out of the three. As soon as Bentancur came off, Hojbjerg does what Hojbjerg does in most games. He can't do it for 90 minutes, or he ends up in this Ange system. He ends up making mistake after mistake and mistake. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with him right now, is that you get a good 70 minutes, but the last 20, he'll make the mistake and cost us, like he did a couple of weeks ago when we won. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Becky. I thought Hojbjerg played pretty well. Of the midfielders, he was the best. I mean, we've sat here and said that Kulusevski didn't play well, and that Bentancur wasn't his best game. So, maybe a low bar to clear, but Hojbjerg did all right. And then when Bentancur went off, he went to crap. That's frustrating, but it was just, surely we would have known that Maddison wasn't ready for 20 minutes. I mean, we would have known that. So maybe we were hoping and praying, but I don't know. I think now, as Marlon said, it's been a few days. None of us like losing at any point, especially in a knockout competition. But we'd have had Luton away. We've all played that game. We're like, who did Man City get? Well, they got Luton away. That wouldn't have been an easy game either. It's to win the FA Cup. If you're not one of the really good teams, you have to have a bit of luck with the draw. And that, City at home, it's a pretty rough draw. I mean, okay, City away would have been worse, but still, when it's City at home, when you've got half your team missing for various reasons, if the game's in 3 weeks' time, it's a much closer game. It's just It was the wrong time to play them because we didn't have a number of our better players for various reasons.
Yep. I think that's fair. I think I felt exactly the same when all draw came out. Good old Gary Mabbott for pulling out City. And the women as well tonight have drawn City as well. Bless them. It's this sort of idea that it's like we said, we came through a really sticky patch with our injuries. We seemed to kind of come out the other side. I know we had the Chelsea result, we had the West Ham result, and the Wolves and the Villa results, but we had some really positive results at the Everton game, the Bournemouth game, the United game. It was just a few weeks too early for that kind of fixture. We needed Maidstone. And then City. You know what I mean? We didn't need to have City first.
I don't want to lose to Maidstone.
Well, I'd hope we would have beaten them. It was just a round too early, wasn't it? I think, which is why we said off air is that January and February tends to be a fairly sad time as a Spurs fan, because it's usually when we have no cup competitions to play in. I didn't like Sam Matterface's comments right at the end at full time, and he went something along the lines of their end Spurs trophy competitions for this season. It was like, oi, excuse me, until we are mathematically not out of the title race, we are still in the title race.
Yeah, but you can't blame him for thinking that we're not really in the title race.
Like, even Dave said that. Dave went, well, he's right though, and I was like, shut up, Dave.
Hello, let's finish the Man City thing. But I think this is a decent comment that we've got from Coke Can to talk about this, because obviously we've got league games now, 17 left until the end of the season, and I don't think there's going to be any more ins, do you, over the next couple of days? Like, what we've got is what we've got, right?
It doesn't seem like it now. Hojbjerg apparently has decided to turn down all the offers that he had, so you would think he would have left before someone else came in. So yeah, I don't think anyone else is coming in.
So if that's the case, this comment here, like we're 8 points off top. That would be the dream of dreams. But like, how high do you think we can go? Like, will we be this force that Coke Can is asking?
For me, depends on Maddison. If he doesn't get another look, we know Maddison every year gets injuries. You have to prepare for this. But if he gets another one, it then derails Son a little bit. Like, Son was brilliant with Maddison. Them two would literally getting us through games in those first 10, especially with Basuma was playing well and everyone was playing well. But it's going to be a real tough ask. And even then, where does Dragusin fit into all this? How many games is he going to play now? Because if Romero and Van der Ven stay fit, are we all expecting them to be our first choice? Is he going to rotate? It's so many questions to be asking. But for me, yeah, as long as Maddison can stay fit, and when Son is back, and he does have his team, but the problem is April. And April's going to be tough.
That week.
And we might even throw Chelsea into that month as well at the moment, depending on when that fixture gets put in. So we've got favourable fixtures up until then, and then it's all of them, all the big hitters. We could have Liverpool. We've got Liverpool in May. We've got Arsenal, Manchester City rolled into that month as well. West Ham, Newcastle. It's only Nottingham Forest that really we're looking at going, maybe, but Nuno will probably want to get his revenge. So we're kind of looking at it going, April. So we need to basically in the next week, we need to get going now. We can't wait, because if we try and save it till, like you said, till March, April, it could be not the greatest end to the season, especially if all those teams are fighting, especially if Liverpool City are fighting for the title. I don't want to say it, but if the team down the road are fighting for the title as well, it's going to be a tricky month for us.
The one positive thing I've taken from it is United's still in the cup, Arsenal's still in the cup, Chelsea have gone to a replay with Villa, Newcastle is still in the cup, City is still in the cup, and these teams, I think all of them apart from Newcastle, are still United, are still in Europe as well. So those games are going to kind of continue for some part of it where they would play. I think I saw someone tweet yesterday, Spurs are going to play 41 games in total, which is the lowest for a very, very long time, because obviously they got knocked out of the Carabao Cup first round, the round before some people had even entered it. And we've had 2 matches in the FA Cup and no Europe. So I do think that is going to particularly hit teams like Villa. I think that kind of idea of who are our top 4 competitors, they've got European fixtures, and I know unless there's a massive flurry for the last 3 days it is in the transfer window, those teams don't seem to be bringing many players in. So you would think that the majority of their squad they've got now is the squad they are going to go through the season. They've got to have some injuries at some point. It can't just be us and Anjan is making them run their hamstrings off. So you would think that there is, but I'm completely with Marlon. That week, when the fixtures came out and that week was there, you were like, it's like back to when we Champions League in 2022, whatever it was. That run of fixtures is we've got injuries and we've got suspensions. That massively hits the squad, doesn't it? You've got 5 or 6 players that may not even be, and it's not just for one match, it's for getting on 4 or 5 matches. And that will be interesting to see. Have we got the injuries out of the way? As you said, is he going to build a team and the way he wants the team to play, and then kind of build that momentum?
There are 2 things that I'm reminded of. Like the season when we first qualified for the Champions League, we played, I think, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Man United 3 games in a row in 10 days. And we beat, obviously, the 2 London teams at home, and I think United beat us 3-1 maybe.
I think,
but we made it, right? Like we all looked at those games and thought, oh, like we never beat Chelsea, right? Arsenal at that point obviously was a bit closer, but still, no one expected us to win those games. So anyhow, we ended up getting 4th place with the City game at the end away. But so I'm always hopeful that like we've got those 4 big teams, but 2 of them at home, right? So we've got to go to Anfield. That's never easy. We've got to go to Newcastle. But the Arsenal game and the Man City game are at home. So you're thinking, okay. But the other thing is that I'm weirdly enough more nervous about the next 2 or 3 games than I am about those ones in April. Because in my mind, in April, okay, we might be missing 1 or 2 because of injuries. Like unless Romero's done something idiotic, which we can't, say it won't happen. But it's this idea that like right now we are missing we're missing our captain, our main striker, right? And I don't know if South Korea won today, but I assume they probably did.
Tomorrow,
right?
no.
Is it tomorrow? Okay. So fingers crossed he loses and he's back for the game after Brentford, right? Sorry, son, but I want you to lose. But right now, like we're playing these games against teams that we all think we should or could win against, like Brentford at home, Everton away. Like it won't be easy, but people aren't so worried, and yet we're missing players through various reasons. So I weirdly enough, it's like if we don't get the victories now, then the games in April become almost a bit more irrelevant. I mean, they will still be relevant because we'll still be able to stop them. But for Spurs, it's less. It's about what's at that point. April will be about what Spurs can get rather than what Spurs might lose, right? And because if we lose points in the next 2 or 3 games, the April ones will be about kind of almost free hits. We can stop the other team from getting what they want, and we'll be behind trying to play catch up. In a perfect world, you want to go to April, and I want us to be 2nd or 3rd with these run-off games that we've got. If we can get to 2nd or 3rd, knowing that we've got a chance of catching up somewhat. Like I don't think our goal difference is ever going to catch up, but this idea of like making it a bit more interesting, that's what we want. Right? I don't want to be having those title games next season. Like I'd rather get used to it now. And yeah, maybe it doesn't work this year because we're already 8 points behind plus goal difference. But for next year, like Ange clearly thinks next year is what he wants to be judged on. He thinks he wants to win the title. So we have to I want us to be prepared for those moments because we saw last year that Arsenal weren't. When it got to the point where they were actually had games that they needed to win to stay with it, they couldn't do it, right? And probably because the season before they couldn't do it to get 4th. So we need to have we need to be prepared for those. We need to have experience of those really big games where if you don't win, it becomes extremely hurtful to your chances. So I don't know, but I just like as much as April is obviously going to be tough. I do think the next 2 or 3 games, if those players aren't back, if Senegal have gone through tonight, which I suspect they will have done, do you know what I mean? Like if we don't have those players back, it's going to be tough to get the points we need in the next 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, so Kerry's put there, we need revenge over Brentford over the Noosa saga. So I think I was saying before, I got home about 7 o'clock and people were tweeting to say that the Brentford deal isn't on anymore. And now Spurs Simpson's just put there that there's possibly issue with his fitness. Marlon, we've got Brentford on Wednesday, 7:30 kickoff, which after having an 8 o'clock on Friday is like, well, okay, we've got to remember where it is. What's your take on Brentford and how's it going to kind of go on Wednesday? I know Tony's back, isn't he?
Tony's back,
that free kick, didn't he, where he moved the ball and all of that, which seems ages ago. What's your kind of, how do you think it's going to go at Brentford?
For me, I think Brentford will play into our hands a little bit. Thomas Frank doesn't change his tactics. And we saw that from the first game of the season. I believe that if we had more time with Ange and played Brentford, I think we would have gone there and actually beat them. But we just played them. It was first game of the season. We didn't know what to expect. And even Ange, you had Royale starting the right back. Sanchez then had to come in. So there was certain players that just weren't fitting the style of the system. But I think Brentford will completely play into our hands on Wednesday. And I just got this strange feeling that, let's be honest, none of them really played well on Friday. So they've literally had a week off. So they can put everything into this game. And I think because of the way we play and where Tony's been out for months, I think Tony might get knackered in this because he's going to have to do a lot of running. a lot of chasing. So this might be the sort of game that is not, I reckon they'll be bringing off Tony 60 or 70 minutes into it if they have to, because he's missed so much. So yeah, for me, back four obviously picks itself, and it's going to be difficult. Our back four, for me, our back four is so key right now. And if we can keep them together for the next 2 or 3 years, we've pretty much got our back four from 16-17 season. That is how good they can be. So I'm looking at Brentford going, yes, they can cause us problems in certain areas, but without Mbeumo, I just think that the way Spurs play, I just think we're just going to open them up a little bit. And they're not really on form themselves. Yeah, they had a decent game the last game, but I just think that we might have too much for them on Wednesday.
Their run of form before that game, wasn't it? I think it was something like 7 defeat or 7 non-victories in 8, wasn't it? They were on a really bad run, weren't they?
Yeah, the Mbeumo injury cost them dearly. Cost them really so much, because he's so key to what they do, especially on that wing. And secretly, he was one that I was hoping that would look at and get on one of our wings, but Brennan Johnson came in instead.
We don't talk about that. I'm under strict orders not to talk about Brennan Johnson because everybody knows how I feel. But yeah, like the Brentford game. I mean, like Marlon's absolutely right. Like Brentford will come to play, and that suits Spurs, right? And they'll make it difficult in midfield. They'll play the 3-5-2 they usually do, but their 3 centre backs will stay deep, right? So it will be their midfield 3, probably the 2 defensive guys with it, Janelt and Norgard, if he's fit, I guess will play. I can't remember what their team was, but like we know what they do. Brentford haven't really changed that much. I think Matthias Jensen's a really good player. I've always thought he was a really good player. So that they won't make it easy for us, but yeah, they won't press probably in the way that City did. They won't be able to keep the ball in the way that City did. I mean, it's possible that they could try that, but I just don't see it with them. So it's like with Marlon saying, our back 5 is fully fit. Right, like none of us look at the goalkeeper's set, the back 4 is set. We shouldn't have any issues there. It's what we do going forward. Like who is actually are we going to have the same 6 that we had against City? Because there's a good chance we probably will. I don't think Maddison's going to start. So you might, if we wanted to have a bit more energy, you might say, okay, Skip will come in and we'll allow Bentancur and Hojbjerg to move a bit further forward. I could see some logic to that, if only because it would mean that Johnson's out of the team and Kulusevski would play right wing. But I don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah, it's how good are we at creating chances? And I worry that we've got a front 3 that are good at finishing moves, but not really creating them. I don't really think that Brennan Johnson's going to beat a man and put it on a sixpence for Richarlison to score. I don't think Werner's going to do that either. And so, I mean, I've mentioned it before on previous things, but to me, I don't know why we don't say, you know what, Emerson, you can play right back and we'll move Porro further forward, because he does have the quality of delivery where if he gets in a position, you think he could actually pick someone out. I think it was against City, there was an occasion after Skip came on and Skip found himself in the right wing position and there were like basically one person to hit, but only 2 defenders. So you thought, if the run is good, there's a chance. But you don't think Skip can make that cross. You think that Porro maybe could. So the amount of creativity and guile in the team we had against City is lacking, and we're going to need it against Brentford if we want to score. I think conceding, we probably won't do that. Like Brentford are good enough to score, but we've got our best 5. You'd have to think that they would be good enough to stop it. But going forward, will we score enough? Like we've scored goals in other games. We've played well when we had Lo Celso and Brian Hill. When we played Villa and we battered them and should have scored 3 or 4 early on, we had players that Ange has not wanted to play at any point in the season and was forced to because of injuries and everything. And we played quite well going forward. So the talent is kind of there, but you're going to get a different kind of winger. Like I'm pretty certain that Werner will start ahead of Brian Hill, but that doesn't mean I think he probably should, because Brian Hill, as much as he's lightweight and all those things, actually wants to get on the ball and take players on. And you haven't seen that from Johnson, and you haven't seen that from Werner. And if I'm defending those 2 guys and they're not willing to use their pace, brilliant. That is great. I'm slow and fat and old. You play in front of me, no problem at all. If you want to run behind, I'm in trouble. But we haven't we haven't shown the ability to really do that often enough to hurt teams. So I worry about us going forward. There was a comment about us scoring enough goals. With Son out of the team, he's our top goal scorer. So Richarlison is a finisher of crosses, whether it's on his head from Kulusevski or down low from Johnson or whoever. He's not the creative one. He's not going to play those passes around the corner that Kane used to do. So where is the guile in the side? That to me is the concern.
Because that's the thing that I was saying. I noticed people saying about Richarlison. They were like, well, Richarlison didn't do anything. But at the end of the day, if he isn't getting the service, he's got to kind of try and drop into midfield, which he did do. There were a few times when there was a few handbags, wasn't there? I seem to remember. And he doesn't hold the ball up the same way Kane did. But he was obviously trying to get a little bit more involved. But yeah, I think I'd like to think another few days of maybe Bentancur and Maddison working with Werner and deciding how to bring him and Johnson in, because otherwise him and Johnson aren't getting involved, aren't taking players on. If Maddison is able to, like you said, he probably isn't going to start, but at some point in the game, does Kulusevski go out wide and Kulusevski comes on, be the person to put the crosses on? On Friday, he didn't have enough time to do that because, by the time Maddison had come on, the game was almost gone. I was just reading the comments there about, struggling to get goals. Earlier in the season, obviously, when Maddison was playing and Bentancur was injured, we've got the Burnley result that we had. There were games where we were scoring and we were, the kind of flowing football was working. And I think all the injuries have just kind of taken that out of sync a little bit. The thing that I thought about Friday is they all looked quite sluggish. And interestingly, they'd had a winter break, yet came back quite sluggish. Yet those teams that ended up having replays from the previous round that had their match in the middle of their winter break didn't seem to play as sluggish. So it's interesting how this kind of argument that you don't play, how it kind of affects how you come back. Because I noticed, I think on Friday, all of the games were 0-0 except Spurs, which was 1-0, and that was nearly 0-0. So all the matches that played on Friday, again for TV, they probably shouldn't have been on Friday. None of those sounds like they were spectacles.
And you're talking about the fact that Brentford haven't played since the Tony free kick, which feels forever ago.
Ages ago,
right?
Yeah.
It's not that long, but they've had 10 days off. So they may have had that replay and the league game, but they've had another winter break because they only got a week and a half the first time. They've had another week and a half, obviously to get Tony back to speed. He scored in his first game back. I don't think Brentford will change that much, but it's all about Spurs. Can we get whatever the balance right? Can we do that? Because we can sit here and say the balance wasn't right because City played well, and maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's the reason we couldn't do the things we wanted to do because City were just too good. And maybe we can play the same 11 and it will be good enough to beat Brentford because Brentford can't stop us in the way that City did. I hope that's true, clearly.
Maybe Udogie and Porro will get further forward and that will then kind of squeeze that area, allowing more passes for kind of Werner and Johnson that wasn't kind of possible on Friday.
Because I've always liked Bentancur and Hojbjerg together. They've proven under Conte that they work well as a tandem. So if you did have the centre backs and then those two ahead of them, and basically said to the fullbacks, "Okay, off you go and join in," then Kulusevski's got more options when he's on the ball. The wingers can stay wide, and we might look more of a threat. I mean, I can't imagine we won't look. we can't look worse of a threat. So it kind of depends on are Brentford able to stop what our players can do, because right now our players, we kind of know what we're going to get from Werner. As Marlon said, Werner is not a great finisher. So if we're not using Werner's pace or Johnson's pace, we're a 9-man team, frankly. And that's not to blame Werner and Johnson. We have to be able to use that. They can make as many runs as possible, but if we can't get the ball to them, then they're basically, traffic cones on the side of the pitch. Doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help us.
Because that came across on commentary, wasn't it? They said, I think as Ali McCoy kept saying, the amount of runs they've made and they're not finding Werner. And then I spoke to people in the stadium and they were like, you could just see him running and then running back and then running and then running back and then running and then running back.
Do you think there's any chance, right? And it was only because what he done against Manchester United, but would there be any chance that he kind of brings in Dragusin, where he plays Porro and Udogie as wing backs, and we go with three at the back and it goes a 5? Do you think there's any chance he would even try that? Because, as you said, we've got no creativity. That midfield look a bit disjointed the last couple of games. would there be any chance of, like you said, it means then Johnson come out the team, Kulu can then be on that right-hand side, push in the middle if he needs to, and it just leaves Porro and Udogie to go down those wings. And it gives Dragusin, and we can get to see what they're like as a three at the back. Would there be any chance that he would even try it? I know he's not done it before, but is it a why not?
I can't see it myself. You say about Conte and how rigid Conte was in a kind of defensive, in that exact formation. And then Ange is like the opposite way in the fact that he's so inflexible and the fact that he wants to play that kind of attacking formation. So no, I really don't think, because even when we've had games when we're trying to see the game out, he sees the game out by changing the personnel. He doesn't change the formation.
No, it was only because he did do it against Manchester United for I think for about 10 minutes, but I can't remember who got injured. So then he had to change it back because he had Dragusin, Van der Ven, and Romero on the pitches for that little bit, and it was like really. And I said that's the only thing he can be trying to do, and I was like, I was really surprised that he did play at the time. And I know Brentford do play three at the back, so I was thinking, would there be any chance that he would try to overload them on that down the wings?
I mean, this is like I think we've seen from Ange that his centre backs have to win 50-50 battles, right?
Yeah.
Because it is going to, and most teams only play with one striker, right? So when you've got 2 versus 1, it doesn't matter so much. But Brentford will play with 2, and so it's going to be more difficult for them to win those battles. Although I think they will, right? Like as good as Tony is, he can't do it by himself. He can't create the goals. He can't score the goals. He needs to have someone else. And because Umbrella was injured and this is at AFCON, he is kind of by himself. I'm not sure I trust anyone else in that team to provide the bullets. Maybe Jensen, because I really do rate him. But it's, Dragusin's a weird one, because we talked before the show started about how he'd almost certainly be playing for Bayern right now, right? Like, and he's sat on our bench and he chose that role, and Dyer's getting those minutes instead. And I mean, that's great for Spurs because, let's face it, we got the better part of that deal. But for Dragusin, are we really going to swap him in if Romero and Van der Ven are both fit, bearing in mind that we know how good they are together?
Yeah.
I'd be surprised. Like, maybe if we're 3-0 up, we might say to Dragusin, okay, on you get for 15 minutes. But every Spurs fan will be thinking, do you not remember West Ham? Like, we'll all be nervous, right? That's just part of our nature. So, like,
I think he's been brought in knowing that one or other is going to get injured or have suspensions. Not necessarily now this season. 5 bookings comes around very quickly, doesn't it? So we were saying that off air with the whole kind of Noosa thing about whether he has chosen Brentford over Spurs, and we were talking about how Dragusin chose us over Bayern Munich. Is that Dragusin knew what he was coming in for? He knew that there was going to be Romero and Van der Ven were ahead of him. But I do really think he is there as a kind of the three of them when there's injuries, but also as hopefully as a kind of rotational system, because that's what we always want. We want this strength in depth that we just don't ever have. And to hear that Noosa is saying he didn't want to come in, because even Alistair Gold said last week that Noosa was going to be the Sonny replacement for future years, is he couldn't feel that there was going to be a position for him this year. Even if he was loaned back and he came back in the summer, because you've got Hill there, and it kind of begs the question: does that make it sound like Hill's not going now? And is Werner going to stay longer than just the kind of season loan? And it's because there must have been something that sort of made him decide that it wasn't for us. However, equally, he may have spoken to Ange, and Ange felt that it wasn't the right decision either, because I think Paul O'Keefe said that we only actually had one meeting with him. It wasn't as kind of drawn out as people were saying, and I genuinely never heard of him till about 10 days ago.
For most people, I hadn't even heard of him.
I'm not going to lie. Like, I think if Noosa goes somewhere else, it makes more sense for his career. It does, right? Like, Sonny's got at least one more season at Spurs, maybe longer, because he doesn't seem to be slowing down. So the idea that it feels like a one Foyt situation. We bought him to replace Alderweireld, who then didn't leave, and Foyt left before him. So, like, if I'm Noosa, he may not play every game for Brentford, and the key difference is, like, Spurs will almost certainly, fingers crossed, thumbs pressed, as they say here, we will have Europe, so we'll have those games. You're right, Dragusin will get his minutes, and if it's Europa League, so be it. If it's Champions League, then he might play league games if we decide they're less important. I don't know how we would make that call, but. Like, Dragusin will get his minutes. This season, he may not, right? And that is one of those things. He made that call. This season, he may not play much. But yeah, if we're in Europe, which we hopefully should be, then he will get those minutes. And all of those players, like, again, if I'm Noosa, I might want to revisit the deal in the summer. If I see that Brian Hill's definitely on his way out, which, let's face it, he probably is, right? Then, and I look around and I think, well, you know, Solomon, like, where if Werner doesn't sign permanently, then there's a spot for Noosa. If Werner signs permanently, then yeah, why would Noosa join now or any point? Because you know he's behind Werner and Son, most likely to get possible minutes off the bench. And at his age, when he's not even starting for this Belgian team as it is, he needs games more than anything. So yeah, like we could offer him a good money, but so could Brentford, right? Like Spurs aren't going to go out and offer him 65, 70 grand a week on a 6-year deal. Brentford might offer him 30 grand and we might offer him 30 grand. But at that point, who are you going to play more? And so, or who's going to play you more? And like, it feels a lot like the Alex Scott move from last summer. Every Spurs fan wants Alex Scott because we know he's a Spurs fan and we know that he's good. And we want to have those championship players come through and make it big at Spurs. We do want that. But for Alex Scott, he's not going to play every game for Spurs. There made no sense signing in the summer because there's no European football. There are no games to play, really. So he can go to Bournemouth for 1 or 2 years and then everybody wins. If he proves himself at the level, he'll still get a move somewhere else if he wants it. And he's not going to be, 27, 28 at that point. He'll still be young. He'll still be 22, 23, which is kind of, I think, what Spurs need to be looking at. Like I saw a comment earlier about we're going for these youngsters, which are great when it comes in, 2 or 3 years down the line, because that's what we've seen with Sarr, right? So like even with Devine, we could see it 2, 3, 4 years down the line, they turn out to be astute purchases. But right now, Spurs are kind of, actually, I don't want to be thinking 2, 3, 4 years down the line. Like if I'm looking for a striker to come in the summer, I want someone who's going to come in and be in that first team. Yeah. I want Son, as weird as this sounds, I want Son to be the option because he's aging out. And I want to have someone who's like going to be like not going to become the new Son, but is that person right now, so that Son can play fewer games and can be useful. He may well still be captain, but everybody knows at some point he will probably be phased out or become part of a much stronger squad, which is what we want. Like I want to be able to sit here on a Friday night before a game or whenever we do a show before a game and say, I don't really know who we're going to play. I don't know what our best 11 is, but I trust that whoever is played will go out there and do what Ange wants them to do, because Ange ball isn't going to change. It's the same with Klopp. Like that statistic of the only time that the Klopp's best 11 played together was in the Champions League final. I can't believe that. I cannot believe that statistic, because in my head, that was their best 11. So surely they would have played it more often. The fact that that's the only game those 11 started together blows my mind. But that's kind of what we want Spurs to be. We want Spurs to be a side where you play maybe 8 or 9 of your best team every week, but it's a different 8 or 9, and you can throw people in and you can throw youngsters in, and everybody's developing, everybody's getting minutes, and crucially, we're still winning.
And that sounds like City.
Yeah, but that if you like, it should be really where Arsenal are. Arsenal's problem, and I love saying this out loud, Arsenal's problem is because they went for one person, because they thought one person is what they needed, but they had a Champions League campaign. Yeah. So what they needed to do was what West Ham did: take that money and buy 3. That's what they should have done, to strengthen everything, so that when those moments come at the end of the season, and if Arsenal are in a title race, it will happen again. That they sold Xhaka and they bought Rice. Where's the strength there? They've got a better player for 80 million more, but when it comes to it, I still don't trust them to have enough to do what they want to do. And that's what I want from Spurs. I want us to have a squad where we look at it and say, Son might be the captain, but he's not guaranteed to start. Right? I want him to be an option off the bench 4 times out of 10, 3 times out of 10. That's what we want, but we're just not there yet. That will have to be in the summer.
We'll think about those in a long time. He's still playing all the time.
Sorry. Yeah, the reason I'm being positive, mate, is because we're not talking about Brennan Johnson.
No, do you know what? I make HG right. I said this a couple of weeks ago. Signings can't be now going. We can't be going. We need to improve the bench. How you improve the bench is you improve the first team first, and then you improve the bench. So when we're looking for the striker, when we are looking at midfielders, they have got to be coming in to be wanted to play first team football. Because if it's, say it's Bentancur that we're replacing, right? He's good enough to be on the bench, but he's also good enough to be in the first team, right? And that's the sort of players you want. But if you're looking at someone, I'm going to take Brennan Johnson as a prime example right now. If you're bringing in someone to replace Brennan Johnson, you basically want Brennan Johnson to be cementing his first team place. But if he comes out, someone of good quality is coming in. But right now, there's a lot of hoo-ha about Brennan Johnson. Same with Richarlison, same with Werner. You know, you've got to have replacements good enough. We shouldn't be signing people to back up Son. We should be signing Son's replacement, not the person to back him up, because then you just end up with this full squad of bench players. You end up with the Spencers, you end up with the Hills that are just not good enough. And then when you're trying to offload them and get rid of them, it just becomes a massive problem. And hopefully Spurs can see, like Dragusin was the first time I looked at the signing and went, he's good enough to be in the first team, right? And that's the sort of players we should be trying to sign, not, you know, where your left back is the understudy to your doggy. No, you want a better version of your doggy, a better version of Porro coming in. And that's what it is. Like, we signed Porro because he was a better version of Royale. It's just the way it is.
Go on.
Sorry, so if we're signing players like Nusa right now, and you know, I see that it apparently might happen, like that's fine, but that's the type of deal where you say, you know what, we're going to sign him because we think the price is a good one now, and we'll pay it over installments and all those things that Spurs will take into account. But we don't really see him being part of anything at Spurs for another couple of seasons. And we say, right, you're on our books, off you go on loan somewhere else, right? And prove yourself, because at Spurs right now we can't afford to wait on you, right? Now that's the type of deal that teams can make when they have 25 players who they trust right now. And Spurs, I mean, we're looking at players who play a lot. Like Hojbjerg's going to leave. I think Lo Celso's going to leave, right? I mean, Lo Celso's not played that much, but these are players that I think Ange trusts. I think that Spurs fans trust to come in and do something, and those players will go. So in the summer, it does make more sense to me to go for players that, like, again, they're not replacements, but they are players that you see as being ones who you trust to play when they come in. Everyone talks about where will Gallagher fit. I don't care where Gallagher fits. I care that the squad gets better so Ange can decide who he wants, right? And if you think that Gallagher is better than Hojbjerg and Skip combined, you make the deal, right? You make that swap. And if it costs Spurs an extra couple of million, fair enough. Now, I don't think that will happen. But that's the kind of thing that Spurs need to be doing, because, like, you know, even though we've got a much better first 11 and we've got a number of like bench players who we think will come in and do that, we still don't have enough. So to put money on it's like, you know, we put money on Sarr 2 or 3 years ago. Well, it looks great business now.
Yeah.
But for 2 or 3 years, what happened to Spurs then? We waited and we wasted those 2 seasons. And that's not Sarr's fault. But it's just Spurs saying, look, if those deals are there to be done for 10 to 15 million, brilliant. Nusa at 30, to me, is too rich for our blood. As much as I like the idea of it, I want that extra money spent on players for now. Yep. And if we don't think Nusa is that guy, then why are we looking at it? To save a few bob later on? That's not what Spurs should be doing right now.
Marlon, where do you kind of see any ins, if there are any ins? I know we said earlier in the show we probably don't think there are going to be any now, but if, say, hypothetically, Hojbjerg does decide to go to Juventus on Thursday afternoon, and you know, maybe we've got Sessegnon's possibly going. They've said that Hill is maybe not in Ange's kind of plans. Who? It's not a, you know, pick anybody you like, but who would you hypothetically think would be ideal to come in?
I think the only person that I've seen is probably more realistic, and hopefully there's a conversation happening, is, I think his name is Rowe from Norwich. He probably looks the most suitable that we've been linked with to an Ange system, and especially the winger type. Like, you know, I sit there and I openly admit I used to watch Celtic under Ange, right? I'm not one of those who go, yeah, I just, I actually used to watch Celtic, and I used to enjoy watching them a lot. And Rowe kind of suits what he kind of had with Thiago and all those players that he had as a front three at Celtic, because he never really had an out-and-out striker at Celtic either. But because they were so fluid, it managed to help, and that's where Son comes in for us. So he's probably the most suited. But if not, I think that winger situation is the bit, because I think that's where we're lacking our goals, and that's been all season. It's not just been like a one-off. And Son, when he went out there against Newcastle, if it wasn't for Trippier, I think we would have been questioning. I've said all season, our left-hand side, not one player has cemented that position all season. It's been mish-mash, and it's like Johnson's been out there, Son was out there to begin with, Solomon's been out there, and none of them actually made a concrete effort and gone, I want to take this position, where Kulusevski was kind of always on the right and played on the right, and that was it until he moved into the middle. So it's just been a weird situation. So I think the winger is probably where we need to strengthen the most. But I just got a strange feeling, like I said, I don't think there's going to be any more because I think Werner's basically taken that position.
HG, what about you?
I'm reading some of the comments. Noosa is a gamble. I agree with what Binny Guy is saying. Do you think Johnny Lowe was? I don't know enough about Johnny Rowe. Really, I've seen him score a couple of goals, but I've not watched him play. I just think, like, Spurs, in the summer, we know we will buy 2 or 3, like, first-team players, right? And we'll sell a few, but we'll certainly buy people that we think will come in and play, right? And Ange will have to sell that, right? But I think that there are still spots in a match day squad that are available for anyone to come in. They will be part of that, like Hojbjerg is not going to be around. I'm convinced of that. Lo Celso, again, I said that already. So, like, we will be getting players, but it's like the idea of signing a Spence for the future or a Sarr for the future. I don't really think we need that right now. We've got enough academy prospects that could be ones for the future. So, at what point is it like? I mean, like, I get they cost more, and I sat here and, like, I didn't want us to sign Johnson, and he cost a lot of money, and I've seen kind of what I expected to see, sadly. But those are the deals that we need to be going for. We need to be spending 30, 40, 50 million on players where we think, like, they're not going to come in and be bit parts. We spent 60 million on Richarlison, which made sense if you were actually ever going to play him as a rotation to Kane. We never did. We stuck him on either side of him, which didn't help anyone, right? Certainly didn't help Richarlison. So, yeah, now we've got a central striker who is scoring. If you can get him if you can provide him with the chances, I think Richarlison will score. If you ask him to do a bit of everything else, then he'll struggle, right? He can sniff chances out. And the way that Ange Ball plays, you just need to get it in that area and he will get on the end of it. But to me, January is about filling holes and maybe buying one if you can, right? And I think we've done that. The summer will be like the actual kind of, right now I'm going to do the proper remake of the living room. And I'm going to put in new windows, and I'm going to buy the latest Ninja air fryer, or whatever middle-aged thing people usually go on about. I don't know what an air fryer is. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's
your living room. You said you're doing your living room, Mel.
Yeah, no, we've done that. So, but like, I guess the bedrooms. But do you know what I mean? Like that's when you do it, right? That's when those things are available. That's when the sales are. We do it then, and until then, we need to be thinking. I don't think Werner will sign permanently. I don't really want him to either, if I'm honest. But the idea of Werner being the 6th striker of your front three, I'm okay with that, because you've got experience and you've got something that can be that person for 1 game out of 6, 1 game out of 7. That's what you want. But if it was someone else, I'd be happier. But I don't mind Werner on a cheap deal, because that would be relatively cheap. But it's a short term. We need someone for a couple of years to perform a very specific role off the bench, or maybe to start once in a while. And I would like to think we can do better, is my opinion on Werner. But I don't know. I'm not as concerned as a lot of Spurs fans are about getting people. I think our squad is more than good enough now for what we need. And once everyone's back fit, we'll win a lot of games. But for next season, we will be replacing some of those subs that will play lots of minutes, because they will want to go. Hojbjerg wants a proper retirement deal somewhere, right? Leon is not that deal, so I don't mind. I completely understand him saying no to them. He said he
wanted more minutes, didn't he? But arguably, if everybody's fit in our midfield, he doesn't get minutes, does he? He's on the bench, which seems a bit odd.
The Spurs it sounds awful, and I mean, why would Spurs sell him now? There's no point. There's nothing in it to Spurs apart from getting an extra bit of money. It's like it would be like selling Sanchez in August. Like, we all understood why Spurs did it, but he had a year left on his deal, not 18 months, right? So Hojbjerg, to me, he may not play more minutes between now and the end of the season, but wherever he goes, it will be because he wants to be somewhere for a number of years and he wants to play more often. and that might well be back in Germany. I don't know, but it's not going to be Spurs. Like Spurs' future doesn't contain Hojbjerg. He's like, if we hadn't had the injuries that we've had, he may well have gone in January. But again, the clubs where he wants to go, they don't have the money to pay the money that Spurs would want. They really don't. And unless Hojbjerg comes in and makes them better, why would they spend a lot of money on a guy who's 29 next summer? It makes no sense to anyone else either. So, like, we won't get the money that we all think we could for Hojbjerg unless he stays within the Premier League. That's the thing. Like, if West Ham want to offer him good money, great. Then Spurs would get the money they want. But I don't think Hojbjerg wants to stay in England. I think he wants to go somewhere warmer. And I don't blame him. I would do the same.
Just while we're sitting here, I've got a sheet here with all the kind of ins and outs. And we've got Spence, who's gone out on loan. Divine's gone out to Port Vale. Phillips gone to Plymouth. Tanganga's gone to Millwall. Dyer's gone to Bayern Munich. Perisic has gone to Hajduk Split. And Reguilon's gone to Brentford. Marlon, that's a pretty good kind of transfer window, isn't it, of players off the kind of in terms of, you know, what Ange sees as his players. I know some of those will come back. Phillips and Divine will come back, but that's pretty good. If Ange keeps telling us we're supposed to pay attention in the second season, that's a pretty good second window, isn't it?
Yeah, but it only becomes a good window when we go into the summer window and some of the problems have been addressed. I totally agree with HG there. You've got to keep the momentum up. The summer window, for me, look, it was a good window of the incomings, but Kane was a massive. Once you take Kane out of the situation, the window then becomes not a great window, because at the end of the day, you're then having to replace Kane. Yeah. January for me has probably been a great window so far, and I personally didn't even think we'd get two. The fact that we got two signings, and even for me, who's like, I'm like when it comes to signings, I'm kind of like in January. Everyone always goes, it's difficult, but as we saw with Dragusin, if you go and give the team what they want and you want a player, it happens, right? This whole January is a hard window. Dragusin's just kind of torn that up because he was playing first team football, Genoa, right? And you can get good players who are not playing for top clubs. They are there as long as you do the scouting. So it's been so January has probably been so far a better window. Did I expect, look, I don't expect a striker to come in. Yeah. And there was a comment earlier about Brazil's number 9. But Brazil haven't had a decent number 9 since 2002. So it's kind of, Richarlison's okay, but he's a stopgap now. And we need to, like, if we want to be improving and go in for a title charge as Ange wants, that front three can't be our front three going into next year. And that's, for now, it's good enough for now. And when I say good enough, I don't even know if I believe that to a certain extent. But for next year, if I said to you 3 years ago that Richarlison, Werner, and Johnson was going to be our front three, right? Considering Johnson was playing for Nottingham Forest in the academy, Richarlison was at Watford, I believe, at the time, and Werner was just signing for Chelsea, and he was missing all his chances, you would have gone, nah, never. Especially when we had Harry Kane, you would have gone, never.
Well, also, you'd have gone, where's Son gone? It's like, what's happened to Son? What's happened to him?
Yeah, but that drop-off is so massive, and I feel sorry for Ange in a way, because he's now got to work with it. And if we look at the games that we've had done, like, let's take the last 3 games. Burnley, we weren't very good. Man United are poor, and we didn't even create that much. We created some, but not very much. And then Manchester City, we've created nothing. So I know I'm saying Brentford will kind of play into our hands, but I am worried that that's going to be our front three. And that's kind of where I'm going with this. That's the bit. The most improvement has to be them, and that needs to be dealt with before the first game of the season next year.
I'm going to say, like, in a perfect world for me, like, I still think in Ange's system, Son is the central striker. He's not a winger. He can do it.
Yeah.
He can do it better than anyone else we've had, because, as Marlon said, we've not had a left winger really all season. It's been chop and change the whole way through. Perisic was the most convincing left winger we've had all season.
Yeah.
And the poor bloke only playing him on sub. You know, I think he started the cup game at Fulham. That was it. And then he got injured. So, like, if Son is your main striker, I don't mind that. And if Richarlison is your lump it on and see what happens, or we'll start, you know, the old, you know, 4th or 5th game, I'm all right with that, because I think those roles would fit. But down the side, like, you know, Kulusevski is a great player, but I wouldn't want him starting every game. Johnson, is neither of those things. Who have you got down the left then? Like that to me is like, I saw a comment here, like, do I want a midfielder or a forward? I want a top class winger is what I want. An actual guy who can go past you on either side. I mean, like Doku didn't, I don't know how much he cost Man City, but he came from the French league, right?
Yeah.
None of us had really seen him play that much. But the fact that he can go from 0 to 60 in 4 steps means he's a threat. And he can go at either side. Like, do I trust him when he's there? Not particularly. Right? I don't think Doku is a great finisher, but the fact that he can do that means that City can play higher up the pitch. And let's face it, we do want to play like that. So we need to find someone who's extremely explosive, who doesn't mind, if he's only got pace, doesn't mind using it. Because that to me is, if I'm trying to build a front six that can actually go on and win things, I want more from the wingers. I just don't think we have them. Like Kulusevski can play that role, but I don't want him starting. I don't think he would be in our best 11 if he was there as a right winger. I don't see that as being his thing for Ange. So I think the summer we've got to go. We've got to go for wingers who can score and beat a man and cross. And those things don't exist. But that's what we need to be looking for. Because
be interesting to see how Solomon does when he comes back, because he looked quite lively, didn't he? But before again he got injured. I remember the Burnley game. Did he assist twice for Son, or maybe in the Brentford game? All the games were really sunny. That shows how long ago they were. It just feels like Solomon. I agree. He's not necessarily maybe the first choice, but we talked at the beginning of the season about having those interchangeable positions where Son can play up front, Kulusevski can play 10, can play wide, and have this with the injuries. I know we keep going back to it. It's just stopped that from being an option. And like you said, Marlon, right at the top of the show, Johnson's played too many minutes because he was never expected to play that many minutes and be thrown in. And a bit like when we've talked about Charleston at the beginning of the season, it's kind of affecting his confidence. He's hesitating, and there's these sort of situations where it's not natural. And we talked about that last year with Sonny. Give Sonny time to think, and it's a disaster when he doesn't have to think. But then having said that, I know there's lots of comment about Johnson. The Everton game, the Bournemouth goals were almost identical. Crosses to Richarlison and Richarlison scores them. So, yeah, I think.
To be fair to Johnson, I will say this: he didn't have the pre-season that everybody else had. Like Van der Ven, came in a few days before Brentford, but as a centre back in that system, well, your job is to make sure the ball doesn't get past you. Pretty much, like there was no real intricacies of the system for Van der Ven to learn. But for Johnson, I feel like you watch him and he's looking around the whole time. He's not sure where he needs to be. He wants to make sure he's in the right place. But that's the concern, is that he's worrying too much about where he is rather than playing the game no matter what. I haven't written Johnson off at all. I'm just saying that based on what we've seen, I've been unimpressed. But that doesn't mean he won't get better or that he can't get better. It's just that's like whether it's the amount, like he played every game for Forest. Right, so playing regular Premier League football shouldn't have been a concern. Even if Spurs are a higher level, you should be used to that kind of pressure. Like at Forest, he was one of the main men, so he dealt with pressure last year. He kept them up with his goals, even if he got 8, I think, in the league. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was massively important to Forest. So I get frustrated when I hear people say he wasn't expecting to play this often. Maybe not, but you're being bought for a lot of money. And you should be wanting to play lots of minutes, to be there and prove you are the guy. And if you're not, I almost find that more worrying than his performances on the pitch, if I'm honest. Because again, to pick an awful example, but we saw Dele Alli come in at Spurs and own it from day one. He belonged at that level. And we were like, who is this kid? None of us had watched Milton Keynes. None of us knew much about Dele Alli, but we saw him come in day one and say that, I'm as good as you lot. I belong at this level. Sessegnon has never belonged at that level. Never looked like it. Johnson is the same, sadly. And so I want to see them say, like, I am good enough to be here. Because if they don't believe it, they're never going to show it.
But to be fair to Johnson, last year he didn't start the Premier League season very well. He finished with a flourish with Forest, but he didn't really he's showing what he's doing now. But when you come into a club like Spurs for Johnson, it's a different type of responsibility he's got, and he's playing a different system. And he was injured in pre-season, so he'd only just come back when he played. So there's a lot of factors to play into it. And as you said, like we knew what we're getting with Johnson. I think most of us, right? He's not the greatest finisher again, but he will get into certain positions. And I think the problem for us right now is that he's expected to cross a lot of the ball. And that's just not been working out for him. Will it? We don't know. I know a lot of people are comparing him to Gareth Bale because obviously the Welsh connection, and Gareth Bale had a terrible start when he played for Spurs, right? So everyone was always going to make those comparisons.
But personally, he didn't. Yeah. That's the thing. The thing with Gareth Bale is that personally, he scored at Fulham in game 2 or 3. He scored against Arsenal in the North London derby. So personally, Gareth Bale had a pretty good start. And I thought that Gareth Bale...
But I remember there was games that he was... I remember away at Everton where Gareth Bale came on and he got annihilated by Coleman, same as Coleman away. And Coleman got man of the match in that game. And there were certain games that Gareth Bale just didn't... He looked a shadow of himself. And it wasn't until he got... And then it was obviously everyone was going, he hasn't won a game when he started. He hasn't done this. And it was starting to get on top of him. And it was only until Harry Redknapp went, all right, 2 minutes to go. I'm sticking you on. We're winning. We can't lose this. And then it just all seemed to change. And he changed his position. He moved him further forward. So it all kind of fell into place.
Sorry, go on. You make your point. Sorry, it annoys me when people
but I don't. For me, Gareth Bale, you could blatantly see he had talent, right? There was more to it, but it was a case of it was more about the slow start. It does happen with certain players, and who knows? In any next year, Johnson could probably turn up and probably suit the system. He's played and the system for a year, and it might come through, or it might not. It might just be another Spurs signing, which young, they've done their research, and it just hasn't worked out. It was a massive risk to begin with, but you just have to take it on the chin. It's just, from what everyone's saying, it was that was the one that Ange wanted to play up front. And he will die. He'll die by this decision. It will either be go for him or not. It's a bit like Arsenal and Havertz. You make a decision as a manager to bring in that sort of expense, and if it doesn't work out, it's you that everyone's looking at. So, and with this one, Ange already came out as soon as he was signed. It was the player I wanted. Everything he's ever said, he didn't say that about Van der Ven. He didn't say about it was Johnson. He said he wanted. So at the end of the day, he's got to make this work somehow. So look. It's early days. We're only 6 months into his reign, and I know a lot of people are frustrated. Now that Eric Dyer's gone, I feel like it's kind of shifted onto Brennan Johnson a little bit. But this is down to Brennan Johnson. This will either make him or break him, right? And this is what being a club like Spurs, a powerhouse, will do to you. And we're about to find out whether he's going to be being loaned back to Nottingham Forest in a year's time, or whether he's going to be in the Champions League stage, at the San Siro doing what he needs to do.
Yeah, I mean, King Hoddle is basically said the same as you, right? Like we really don't know what we're going to get.
Yeah,
we hope we see someone who has the confidence to take players on and feels as if he belongs in the system and understands the system.
Yep.
And sadly, we haven't seen it. But that doesn't mean we all believe it's there. Because it sounds awful, but we all think if Ange has wanted him, and I'm pretty certain Ange wanted him at Celtic when he first got to Celtic, and Brennan Johnson hadn't really played for Forest at any point at that level. He'd only played League One for Lincoln on loan, but Ange was like, no, that's the kind of guy. And you look at it sounds awful. You look at the videos of Brennan Johnson, the guy can finish with either foot, right? Like he gets himself into positions and he can find the corner. So you know that the minerals are there, but the attitude is a massive part at the highest level. And Spurs are, even if we aren't in Europe, we are still the highest levels of football. You want to be playing games every 3 days. You want to be there and you have to perform at the top. And to be able to do that is more mental than it is physical. It's not like talent is very little, not little part of it, but there are numerous players who mentally made the most of the limited ability they had. And they stayed at the top for a long time. And Brennan Johnson, maybe because of his pace, going through the age groups, has been the fastest kid on the team, has been able to do things. And when you get to the highest level, I don't think there are many players at the top who are only pace. You have to have more than that. It's rare that you find someone that has a characteristic that doesn't involve the football that plays at the highest level. Everything involves what you do with the ball. Are you good on the ball? Do you make good decisions with the ball? If your skill set involves, I'm going to make the run, just give it to me. Okay, but surely you then have to be able to do something with the ball once you've got it. And so it is a question mark. We don't know what we're going to get, but we hope that Ange's talent ID is correct. Because if it is, we've got a really good player.
And I think my biggest problem with Johnson, and this is going to sound really, really harsh on him, he's too much of a nice guy. You can see it in the fact, you can see it when they release videos of him and everything. He's the boy next door. We don't need the boy next door. We need the boy with the ego to come in and say, like HG said, I deserve to be here. I want to play here. And that's the kind of, and then that's the Johnson we need. And once he realizes and believes in himself that actually he can be that guy, I think we'll see the player that Ange probably saw in him as well.
Which hopefully the fact that he's turned his comments off of Instagram will help, because it wouldn't do him any good to read any of the comments you get on Instagram, is it? That's not going to help him build his confidence and his arrogance that he needs.
That's why I don't have Instagram, because I don't want to read what people actually think of me. But it's
right. On that note, I think we'll finish up for the evening. Thank you to everybody that's been watching. I've been sitting here listening. As you know, people who watch the show regularly know I'm not very good about talking about players that may be coming in or going. So I've just been listening and reading the comments. I think it would be lovely if we did sneak somebody in on the last day of deadline day. I personally don't think we've got enough homegrown players, but that's possibly a discussion for a different day. So I would like somebody like Gallagher, or of that kind of ilk, that somebody who, adds to that homegrown element. But if it stays with who we've got, I totally agree as well that in the summer, we kind of move on those that have needed to go and we haven't been able to get rid of in January, and we kind of, it's quite exciting to see what comes after that. But thank you, Marlon, for being on. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
No, thank you both.
Where can people find you?
So you can find it's in the handle at Southview Coys. You would have seen Ash on the shows a couple of weeks ago. He's the brain. Well, I'm the brains behind it all, but he's the guy I push out to the front because he does some great shows with us. We do a Tuesday show and a Wednesday show, which everyone seems to love. We do a Spurs show on a Tuesday and a Rivals one on a Wednesday, which is can get a bit heated. And then we do a match reaction as well, which sometimes I host or our other host it. But yeah, just come find us at Southview Coys. We have all types of guests on. Don't matter who if you like Johnson or you hate him, we make sure we get the debate on there, and actually, we have a civilized one. We're not the kind of ones who just go at each other. So, and Becky's been on there before as well, so she can vouch for what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think I ended up being on like a review of the season, didn't I? I remember I had to prepare all these things and I had to like really rack my brain about.
Everybody loved you.
Various
got so many great comments about you afterwards as well.
Thank you. But yeah, let me know. I'll come back on again. HG, thank you again, and thanks for pressing all the buttons and having your kind of expert analysis.
Yeah, I'm put on my favourite comment of the. Thank you, Kerry. I'll ignore the one about Lamella you posted earlier, but thank you, Kerry. Great show. It was fun to be on. Marlon, it was great to talk to you. I've seen your name bandied around. It's been fun to talk, and I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it. Yeah, I think we'll have there'll be a show Friday previewing Everton, and then I'm back hosting next Monday. I am at the Everton game. Oh, before that, we've got Brentford, haven't we? I don't know whether there'll be like a reaction. There is an instant reaction show after the Brentford game, and then I think Friday night will be the preview of Everton. So I'll be at Everton, and then I'll host next week, following hopefully a victory. Everton are a funny side, aren't they? Very kind of. They seem to have a bit of resurgence after losing those 10 points, and it's kind of gone a bit again. I watched the last sort of 10 minutes on Saturday, and there was some serious boos when Luton scored. That's going to be a funny fixture. I thought we played really well on the 23rd of December. Be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for coming along. If you haven't already, please hit the like and the subscribe button. And HG, you ready with the buttons? Oh, it's my job, isn't it? All right. So button number 1 is I can't find it. Here we go. Bye everyone. Thanks for watching.